Okay, so about the math section of the DAT or the quantitative reasoning section, it's 40 multiple choice questions in 45 minutes. And there are two main broader topics on this, and it'd be the mathematical problems and then applied mathematics, which would be word problems. And the material on the applied mathematics and the regular like mathematics questions. So you can have algebra like math problems, but then the word problems can also do algebra, have algebra in them. So by studying for one, you study for the other. And also on the DAT, you get a four function calculator just on the math section, and it's on your screen. And so that on when I took my test, I had to click that my keypad wouldn't work, so I had to individually type each key in. So it's good to practice making sure you are fast with that and also doing math in your head. The types of problems on the DAT for the math section would be algebra, and you can see there's a wide range that spans that: inequalities, equations and expressions, exponential notation, absolute value, and you can read the rest. But when I took my DAT, the new portion of the test was the quantitative comparison section. And there's a sample problem of that later on, but that's more of like GRE style, I believe, where you have different values and you have to compare the two, and the answer choices will be like, these are equal, one is greater than the other, these are not equal. And then you have your word problems and then data analysis as well. There's a couple strategies when going about the math questions, and it just depends on the type of question you're seeing. So for picking numbers, that's really useful when you have problems with variables, because sometimes solving for variables can be time consuming and you have a little bit over a minute per question. So being able to substitute easy to use values like 2 or 3 rather than 0, you don't want to use 0, 1, or -1 when adding in numbers for picking numbers. Back solving is when you use answer choices that are easy to plug in. So if there's a question that you might not know as much how to solve, or in order to be faster, you can take whatever the question stem is and plug your values back into that. Educated guessing is really useful, but you just need to make sure to avoid trap answers. So when you're educated guessing, make sure you do that educated. For the estimating, you want, if you're using values such as like 5,444, you could round that to 5,500 to make your math easier. And then traditional math, you just need to get fast at doing these math problems because they're not super complicated. As you study, you'll see questions that repeat over and over, but you just need to make sure you're fast and able to do them in the right amount of time. I studied for my DAT the summer after my junior year, and I took 6 weeks to study for it, and I just studied for the DAT all day and didn't do anything else really. And the main thing I did was I reviewed my material for the first like 2 weeks, and then after that I did all timed practice for the math section. I wanted to make sure I was fast at the math because I had heard from other people that they didn't finish it when they were taking the test. Some tips I have are to save time and prevent input error. Avoid using the on-screen calculator unless you absolutely need to. So if we're doing a square root, if you can't estimate it, go ahead and plug it in. But other than that, you'll want to make sure you can do the math in your head or written out on your whiteboard really quickly. When I was studying for my math section, in order to make sure I had enough time on the real DAT, I did all my practice tests in 40 minutes rather than 45 minutes. This way, if I got stuck on a question on test day or I wanted to review a question, I would have that extra 5 minutes that I was used to not having. And then also, there's no formula sheet on the DAT. So any formula you might need, or conversions, like surface area of a cylinder, you would need to know that formula. So make sure as you're studying, you start memorizing them earlier on rather than later. And I included a link to the free DAT bootcamp site that has their formula sheet with a bunch of different conversions, and that really helped me while taking it. The resources I used to study were the Kaplan Blue Book, and I read through that to learn their tips and tricks for studying for the math DAT. And then I used DAT Bootcamp because they had the new quantitative comparison questions that weren't on any other section yet when I had taken it, any other prep material. And then the Math Destroyer, I really enjoyed that because it was a lot of practice questions, and I could do it in a timed manner because they sectioned them out with 40 questions versus just giving me a book of practice questions. There are some other resources like Chad's videos, and those are pretty helpful for learning the math section, I prefer to read to study, and so I didn't watch Chad's videos, but I've heard good reviews about those. The Crack DAT is also a bunch of practice tests that you can do, and then same with Gold Standard.